I'm fired up about this one.
Let's hear it.
It's a great topic.
I think so. And I feel like it's one, like, when you hear something or see something and then it seems to be the top of mind every day, like the red car, and suddenly you only see red cars. Well, for me right now, that's imposter syndrome. Not
Yeah,
looking to have it.
interesting.
But a couple weeks ago, Ask Crack It On, as I'm listening to my podcast, as I usually do, I sent you guys a link to the Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson. I might have the hots for this one, but he had one of his hosts, great host, guest on, Near AL, who rocked my world, blew my mind. And the whole topic was a masterclass in changing limiting beliefs.
So did you purposely pick this, or did it just come on coincidentally?
So I was kind of mad at Chris Williamson for a while, so I wasn't listening to him for a bit because I didn't agree with some of his perspectives on a few episodes. And then I started realizing that I was very far behind. And instead of listening to some of the trash podcasts that I was listening to, it was time to feed my brain again. So I went back, and this has just happened to be where I started. And it felt very serendipitous and divine, and has kickstarted the last couple weeks that I've had, where this topic seems to be one that I can't escape. So here we go. So in this podcast, which kind of kicked off a lot of this thinking for me, Near the guest was talking about the fact that we can really shape how we perform and how our body reacts based on our beliefs and based how we're functioning mentally. And one of the things that he started calling out is, in this day and age of social media, we are putting a label on everything. And that one of the most damaging labels that's currently floating around out there is the one of imposter syndrome. This, I could not agree with more. As you guys know, we've talked about it, like I get a little fired up about this one. And what really got me fired up was a couple of days after listening to this podcast, I was sitting at a table with 5 very bright, talented young women who recently won a hackathon that my company co-promoted with TMU. And they were asking us questions about how we got to certain points in our career and all of those things. And then, I can't believe this happened, one of them was like, well, I'm really worried about having to leave school and, take on these internships and do all these things because I suffer from imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
As if you suffer from like asthma or like some real actual ailment.
And how old are these young women?
So they're in 4th year. So I think that makes them like 22 because we don't have OAC anymore. But what blew my mind is, about 8 weeks ago, we ran this massive hackathon and these girls crushed it. They put together this business case and they had facts and figures and data, and they were eloquent and commanding in their speaking. And they had built and deployed AI agents tied to this e-commerce. Like, what they did was absolutely phenomenal. And instead of them sitting there with that pride of the fact that they had accomplished this, I'm hearing come out of the voices, like the mouths of these 5 talented young women, that they suffer from imposter syndrome.
I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to laugh.
Like, as a blanket thing, that's
as
so
being insensitive, but like
as a blanket thing.
Yeah.
Is that the worst thing? Or are we just entering the age when it's becoming more common to actually talk about it?
Is it a syndrome?
But how do you have it before you've entered the workplace?
That was what I said. So I love that you said that. So one of the things that I probed into it a bit. So I wanted to hear. Thank you. I wanted to hear from them because I was also like, I don't want to react too hard and scare off these girls. But I was really curious to hear from them. What does this mean to you? And how do you feel? And then I could almost hear my therapist coming out of my mouth. How does this feel in your body? Like, all of these questions that I'm asking. And some of the examples that they gave me, actually, I'll share them with you because I'd love your reactions. They're like, well, what if we're sitting in a meeting room and we don't know the answer to something? Or what if we're sitting in a meeting room and we have an idea, but what if it's a bad idea? Or what if we're sitting in a meeting room and people are wondering why we're there? And one of the things that I said to them is, I said, first of all, people are going to know why you're in the meeting room and why you were hired.
Mhm.
And also, there's nothing wrong with asking a question. Like, and
Yeah.
if you don't feel comfortable in the moment, ask after. And if you have an idea, maybe figure out the terms of engagement when you first start working with your boss to say, if I have an idea, would you like me to bring it up with a public forum? Or like, what is the best way to, until you get comfortable. But
Mhm.
I also said, if you're in an organization where it makes you feel like you can't contribute, that's a whole other talk. But
Right.
Yeah.
anyway, I'm getting heated on it.
I think it's interesting because what you're saying is that imposter syndrome exists, and we can dissect this in our own personal lives, do a little roundtable in a second. But we're entering this era where maybe because of social media, because of just where the world is at, generations are at, everything is now imposter syndrome. Any question you want to ask,
Mhm.
any little inkling of like
Yeah.
self doubt is getting wrapped up in this label. And that seems slightly misguided.
So, point of
Yeah.
clarification, as my old high school debating thing was like, I think I will argue with you on imposter syndrome exists, and I would say that the terminology imposter syndrome has been created, and I think it's damaging, and I would like to combat it.
So
Uh,
before we kind of do a roundtable, I
I'm cutting
will
off Lex,
tell
but
everybody. I know. I just felt like this was the moment. Sorry, Lex, but
it's
where
okay.
did the term come from before we actually define it? So it was coined by two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Iams in 1978. And they introduced the concept in an academic paper that really did a scientific study on high achieving women who, despite their success, doubted their accomplishments and feared being exposed as frauds. So we're talking late 70s. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Lex. Now let's dissect what it actually means for everybody.
I mean, it's interesting that it began so long ago because I was
Totally.
going to say that these women, Jordan, that you're talking about that you've met with recently, it sounds like to me that to go back to the social media conversation that we have this idea that we're supposed to be perfect, that like
Mm,
you can't ask the wrong question, you can't have a bad idea, you can't like I think that maybe is the crux of the issue, which is we don't need to be perfect. It's okay if you're new to a role and like you ask a
Yeah.
question that maybe you think is stupid, but you know what? There's probably five other people who have the same question as you.
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of the problem is we as women, I think over the years even have been programmed to think that we need to be perfect, whereas men, they're kind of programmed to be brave. So I think that
yep.
Whoa. I like that
that
statement.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, an interesting perspective that we should try and dissect together.
Yeah. What about you, Laurel?
I think it's like the storytelling we almost do to ourselves. Like if you're sitting in a meeting, you almost tell yourself like, I'm the youngest one here, or I'm the newest one
Yeah.
here, or this is a new industry for me. And therefore, yeah, it's like the doubt kind of creeps in, and then we put a stamp on it to say it feels
Mhm.
like imposter syndrome. And like to your point about those girls about like, will people know why I'm here or see the value in it? Like we have to think like, yeah, like you've earned that, like you are there. You are there. And we have to do less storytelling on the like why we kind of think we are doubting ourselves. And I think like, yeah, like do women put that label on more than men? It's probable.
I, you're saying something really interesting and it triggered a thought in me. I can vividly remember when I was working at my agency, I set a goal and a milestone in my head to get promoted to director of our strategy team by my 30th birthday. Like I had this milestone in my head with a deadline, and it would have made me one of the youngest leaders in the company, but that thought had never actually crossed my, like it just wasn't
Mm.
there for me. And I think what was also interesting, I was listening to something else this weekend, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because it sounds so cliche. I was listening to Tony Robbins.
No, I think he's great.
Okay. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think I'm ever going to go to one of his seminars, but I was listening to him. And one of the crazy things that he said that I thought was so impactful was the importance of your narrative.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is the story that you tell, like to your point, Laurel, it is the story that you tell yourself. It is what that internal monologue is. And I think what's interesting if I just generalize and I think of our group, the narrative that we had was about leaning in, being a hashtag boss bitch. I remember reading Kelly Catrone's book, If You Have to Cry, Go Outside. That may have given me other issues, but like there was all this empowerment about owning your space and being in the room and having your opinions. And now that seems to have 180'd. And I'm wondering how that narrative has changed and what that's doing and how maybe it's like ever impacted even any of us in our own moments of like, what is that narrative that you had that was a limiting belief that you realized and had to change?
I think sometimes it's the product of your environment. Like you could work in a toxic workplace where you become to think certain ways about yourself, which is maybe you think that you're not as smart as you are because you have to go back to horrible bosses. You have somebody who maybe is not the best mentor, not giving you the best feedback. So I think environment, it plays a big part. And that's why this term is so damaging,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
it puts so much responsibility on the individual
Mm.
as being at fault for having these feelings. Not to say that they're not real. They're real feelings, but I think the issue is that it ignores the context of where that person is
Yeah.
having these feelings. So I think that's a really key thing to consider.
Yeah. It makes me think of one of the things that has kind of become one of my taglines lately, facts versus feelings.
Yeah.
And like if you can have that moment with yourself of, I'm feeling this way, but what's creating it and what's driving it. And if there are things that you can point out around like facts, like even Lex, like an exchange that we had recently where some of your badassery was shared back with you in feedback. Like, what are those facts that you can remind yourself on? And even
Yeah.
like one of the pieces of feedback I was given recently that I thought was really cool is keeping your own like hype folder. So like
Brag
I love
bank.
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like so when you
Yeah.
receive feedback on something, whether it's
Mhm.
text, whatever, actually keeping it so you kind of have
Yeah.
this hype folder to go back to and you can remember like, oh, I'm a bit of a badass, or like I'm actually
Yeah.
really
Totally.
good at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's easy to default to, if let's say you have a minor bump in the road, which is totally normal,
Yeah.
or you failed at something that you tried, which is again completely normal because the most successful people in the world fail many times. But it's good to remember, like, oh, I actually do have these unique qualities that make me good at my job, or
Yeah.
I'm good at this, or I'm good at that. And it also like gives you perspective around the things that maybe you can improve on. Like, okay, I'm not great at building PowerPoint decks. I need to improve this so that I'm more like Jordan.
Love
Correct.
that.
So
Love
I
Feel
doing
think,
that one in my
PowerPoint.
heart. Feel that one in my
Yeah.
heart.
Guys, I'm
But it's
happy to build your
interesting.
PowerPoints anytime, like honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, Jordan can build all the PowerPoints. I think it's interesting that that group of girls like is self-identifying with the term versus like a feeling that applies to a situation. Because I feel like for me,
yeah,
I've definitely been in situations where I feel almost like I need to prove myself. And it's not, I've never articulated it because I felt like I was an imposter, but I do think that's probably how I was feeling
Right.
versus, and so like
hmm
it is damaging. Like it is damaging because instead of showing up like, hey, I'm part of the team or I'm part of this like project, how can I partner? How can I be collaborative? You're coming from a position of like trying to like make sure you're heard or seen or
Yeah.
viewed in a certain way, and
Right.
it's not effective, right? So there's implications to like either whether you have the stamp of the term or your feelings that it actually impacts kind of the outworking of that.
Yeah. I think one of the
yeah,
reasons why it like irks me so much is because I think it creates a learned helplessness.
Right.
hmm
Especially with some of the younger folks that are hearing it and then becoming indoctrinated into it and internalizing it versus like conversations that you and I have had where it's, hey, I have a feeling. And instead of making it a limiting belief or becoming that learned helplessness, it's what do I need to do to show up in a way that changes that or proves that I can do it, or at least being mindful and cognizant of it, but not letting it hold me back.
Yeah.
yeah.
When I
And I think
was
the
thinking of
sorry, Nita. I think
was going
I
out
was
and
gonna
saying, go for it.
I was gonna say I think
Love that it's a hot topic.
what's most damaging is the fact that we've made it into a dysfunction
Yeah.
versus just saying
Right.
like, it's okay that you're feeling self-doubt right now because maybe you've gotten a new job and you're just learning the ropes, or you've been given this new incredible opportunity that you're so nervous about doing well on, or like, I think it's okay and it's totally normal to have those feelings. But why do we need to make it into a syndrome or dysfunction or something that's potentially wrong with you when
Yeah.
Mhm.
everybody feels it at some point in their lives? I actually saw a stat from the Journal of Mental Health and Clinical Psychology. It said up to 70% of adults experience imposter syndrome at least once in their lives. So it's highly prevalent among high achievers specifically, but I think now with social media, it's becoming prevalent everywhere. So I think it's just important to remember that it's normal, it's okay, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you.
It's
So
a
I
sign
was
of a good
thinking
leader
about
to admit when you are in
100%.
doubt. If you're in doubt, it's fine. If you don't know, also fine. You cannot be a know-it-all. Like, it is a good thing for you to be like, actually, like, I could use other people's like advice or opinions. So I need to go for it.
I was thinking about, why do I feel it? What instances have I felt imposter syndrome? And there's sort of two camps. One is, I think, when it's something in my heart I want to achieve and I haven't taken the steps to get there yet.
Uh,
So it's not just something new, it's something I know that I need to work on. And it's like
Mm,
picking at my insecurities a little bit.
fair.
The other camp is literally things I've never learned before. And then you walk in a situation and you feel like you should be further ahead. So they're sort of attached, but one is, I think, where I need to kick myself in the ass to say, there's a real reason you're feeling this is because you haven't put enough work into it. And you're looking around at people that have done that. And then you're saying, I should be there. And then the other side of it is, as you say, Lex, we are putting ourselves down for being where we should be when it's something completely new that you've never had experience in. And the
yeah.
moment you think to start to dissect where is that feeling coming from, as opposed to just this blank imposter syndrome, I think it's easier to accept it and be able to move forward.
Yeah. I was listening to it always feels weird to say listening to a book. I guess it's just me showing my age, but I was listening to a book recently and I think the author is going to get added to like my girl crush list, but her name is Kate Mason and she was talking about a lot of this and imposter syndrome came up, but I thought what was interesting is she was like, is it imposter syndrome or is it imposing syndrome? And
Interesting.
I was walking the dog and I literally had to stop and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then she goes on to explain, and I guess this is also like a more female thing because we're taught to not take up too much space and things like that, but that that her focus is really the fear of taking up space and being in imposition, and
Right.
like asking for help or asking for more resources or calling out that there's something that like you need help with. And Laurel, to your point, like a good leader should see that and say, okay, great, thank you for raising this. Like we'll fill this gap or whatever. But it's damaging because there's a tendency to either take it on or play small and all of that stuff. And she does call out, similar to what you're saying, Nina, is that imposter syndrome is typically just tied to inexperience. So I thought
Yeah.
what was really interesting is like, again, take that beat. And do you feel like an imposter or do you feel like you're imposing? And
Mm.
based on that, like, what should your course of action be? And the last thing I'll say on this, because I thought it was hilarious, she actually has a video that's on YouTube, and we can link to it from the bio or from our YouTube. But she was talking about how all the wrong people have imposter syndrome.
Oh my gosh. I love
Like,
that.
flex to your stat, right? 70% of high achievers, because again, I think Nina, to your point, it's feeling like I need to perform a certain way or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Think we can all reference some of the people that have either like failed up or like maybe they are the problem. But I just thought that was so funny. Like, so if you want to have a bit of a chuckle with some data in it, it's all the wrong people have imposter syndrome.
I love that.
I mean, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
I
Because
I've seen
ignorance is
some
bliss if you didn't.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. You know what's
100%.
interesting about this imposter syndrome, actually about imposter syndrome comparing it to imposter syndrome is I feel like they both stem from a place of fear, right? Like
Yeah.
imposers like, "Oh, I don't want to impose. I'm afraid to ask for help." Or
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is like, "I'm afraid to fail. I'm
Mhm.
afraid that I don't deserve to be here." So it's interesting that both of these things share that concept of being afraid. And neither
And
one of them are syndromes. They're both just
yeah,
feelings.
and
Let's
it may not even
remember that.
be being afraid of failure. It's just like mediocrity. Like we, especially in North America, like live in a society where you have to be the best. Like
Yeah.
everyone knows I'm super competitive. That's how I've lived my whole life. So I already put myself on that
You
pedestal. And
are?
so even just this term, like failure seems like far, but it's just even being like okay at doing something is also where this stems from.
That makes
And
me
you may
feel
not be the
Yeah.
best all the
I
time.
I definitely struggle with that. I'm a big
Yeah.
time perfectionist, as you guys know. So like for me, I've had moments of feelings of imposter syndrome, whether it's starting a new job where I'm like, this is entirely new for me. And
Right.
I mean, I was really good at school. So like coming into my first job, I was like, I'm gonna be good at this. And when I
Yeah.
wasn't, I felt like, do I really deserve to be here? When it's like, yeah, it's okay. Like things like this happen. You're learning, right? You're in a new environment. You cannot expect for things to always go perfectly. And, I've even I've felt imposter syndrome when I started my business. Like I was like afraid of failing.
Mm.
And I wanted things to be so perfect and I wanted to just do everything at 150% for everything to work out well. And like sometimes that's not real life. Like you're
I
going to
think
have ups and downs and that's all part of the learning experience.
I think one of the things that's really critical in what you're saying is that, like, especially with like the milestones that you're referencing in, is like, what season of life are you in?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you in that phase or you're in that season where you've been in high school and you've mastered it or whatever, or you're then transferring to a new job, or maybe you've decided to change careers. Maybe you've decided to get another certification. Maybe you're jumping onto a project that is completely outside of your wheelhouse. Maybe you're in a stretch role, a term I hate, but that's a conversation for a different, like, what season of life are you in where is it the one where you are building and learning something new? Is it one where you are the expert? And I do think that's important because I think, Nina, to your point, and I do think this happens with a lot of women, is that you don't want to just be okay at something. You typically want to be great at something. And I
Yeah.
think I can definitely say that about the four of us. But sometimes it's okay that you're in a phase where you're learning. Like I remember switching from like automotive to healthcare. I was your car girl. Like I knew that stuff cold. To then have to pivot into healthcare was like, whoa. But what I also had to remember is I was being hired for my digital and technology skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, like, so I think the last thing I'll say on that is, in addition to what season of life are you in, what are your strengths and
Yeah.
your talents that can't be taken away from you? That is either in how you approach a project or whatever expertise you were brought in for, and the rest you can add on to it. And then you will come out of that situation that much more, credentialized or capable. But yeah, I think giving it this imposter syndrome, like, label is just so icky.
Yeah. Super damaging.
Laurel, you had a story about working with a coach where you thought that you had this massive imposter syndrome, and turns out it wasn't. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I
Shocker.
think like I think I thought because I had put those labels on, like I am the youngest. I'm kind of like new to this area, this industry, these roles. Like although I may be the loudest and so got given roles, it was like, do I deserve to be here? And so I think a lot of what I did was being very prescriptive about making sure I was very careful about what I said, how I said it, to make sure I showed up in a certain way, that I had all my facts right. And I think that limited my ability to move things forward because I was so concerned with what other people were thinking about me.
Yeah.
Like I thought other people were like, why is she here? And it's like the coach
Mm,
was like, but you are there. You are
yeah,
Right.
there. And so you already earned the seat. And so the best thing you can do is be the best at your job. And so what you can control is how you think of you and how you want to show up. And so
yeah,
he's like, Jordan, that's kind of the thing about like us layering in that talk track, right? Where it's like, I had almost done that inadvertently. I had never used the word imposter, but it's like, yeah, you almost inadvertently kind of enter meetings and the way you work now because of that. And it was very freeing to be like, oh, that's not what it is at all. I am here. And so now I can show up and be like, yeah, how do I help? How do I collaborate? How do I
Mm.
partner? Versus I need to prove that I'm here. It's a useless, like it's useless. It's not
yeah.
worth the time. And so that's like the detrimental part where it's like, it's one thing to label it,
Mhm.
but we need to understand that it impacts like how we're actually like working and moving forward.
Well, I think what's so detrimental, as someone who's worked with you not once but twice, you are extremely talented. You are very like facts, data, like you see things very clearly, and then you're a person of action. So to even hear that you weren't able to move things forward because that became so much of maybe like that limiting belief or that introspection, that kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but like that is why it is so damaging. And I think when you start to bring in that doubt or you bring in those labels, you start to create something that isn't even necessarily there in the first place.
It's not
Yeah.
necessary. It's a waste of time. It's not acknowledging that like creating space for like there is stuff I need to learn, right? But I
Yeah,
need to be open and vulnerable to my team where it's like I would actually appreciate you sharpening this area because this part is new to me, right? Like that
totally.
openness and willingness is something that is hard to
Totally.
do if you're feeling like you need to prove yourself,
Totally, and,
right?
like,
So
Mhm.
the last thing I would say on that is, like, having been with you in organizations where I've literally watched you get plucked out of a team and put into a role to, like, drive something is because of the way that you approach things, and then, like, even as your friend, for you to not kinda see that and wear that badge of honor, but instead maybe function this way, like, again, like, that's where I think it affects so many people.
mhm, totally.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, like, how to your point, Jordan, when you kick this podcast episode off, how powerful beliefs are
Oof.
Yeah.
in how we behave and how what we believe. So, creating a label like imposter syndrome, now that label becomes our limit because we
Totally.
believe in it.
Totally. Like, I think one of the things that has been a little bit in, like, my back of my head for a while is that I heard this saying, and it was that the life you choose to focus on or the beliefs that you focus on will dictate what your
Mm,
day to day is and how your life actually evolves. Like, so
Yeah.
even I think some of us have a tendency to think of like the bad thing that happened in a day or a week versus like all the good. And that's the natural human condition. We just have a tendency
Mhm.
to focus on the negative. But with something like this, how can you, like, to quote one of my good friends, take a pause for the cause and then figure out that it is just a moment of insecurity, or to Nina's point, maybe there's something that you need to jot down on a notepad or put in your phone.
yeah.
Like, I need to follow up on this. Like, I need to check out this acronym, or I need to ask this person what this means and follow up on it versus it being this damning label that you somehow
Mhm.
have these shortcomings.
It's interesting that you say that because I think I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but every year I select a word that's going to guide me.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And we're in end of March and I just came up with a word because I was trying to like figure out exactly what it was because
Never
this has
taken
been
you this long.
such I know, usually it just comes to me,
Yeah.
right? But this year has been
I'm
so
excited.
different, right? Like I launched podcasts with all of you ladies and talk about freaking imposter syndrome. Like we did not know what we were doing. We don't know how to record. I'm like, what is a thumbnail? Do people even give a shit about what we're talking about? Like this is like living imposter syndrome as we speak right now.
Mhm.
But the word that I'm sort of focusing on is freedom and curiosity, right? Like allowing myself that space, as you say, Jordan, to just do something new, to F
Mhm.
up, to like explore something I've never done before. And having that wrapper is like amazing at 43 and has sort of just been my mantra, at least in these first 3 months. We'll see how the rest of it
Nice.
goes. But that the power of a word, the power of that belief
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
magnified. And I think even as somebody who's, higher up in her career, a little bit more established, like may not have that everyday imposter syndrome, like it still comes out in other areas of my life. But this sort of freedom curiosity is something that I'm hanging on to this year.
I am so stunned, but so stoked that those are your words. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like that seems so counter to I'm so excited for this.
exactly.
What I also love in what you're saying, like, especially with the freedom, I saw this on Instagram, and I think I shared it with you guys, that by age 5, girls start to doubt themselves. they change the way that they play, they change the way that they imagine, they start to hold things up, and I love that you're saying, like, freedom, because it's like, especially at this stage in the game, what can you do to feel more free and release some of that
Mhm.
burden or
Totally.
limiting belief? Like, they're the things that you were told, and, like, I think we talked about that we've talked about this as friends, I think we talked about it in another episode, like, I got labeled the jock at a young age, or that, like, what
Yeah,
can you do to start to, like, relinquish all of that? Or any of these
Yeah.
new stupid effing labels that aren't real, like,
totally.
thank you, social media, that somehow get stuck, and, like, what would that freedom give? I'm so excited these are your words, I'm so excited.
I know.
Freedom's a good
All
one.
right. So
Yeah.
we talked a lot about defining imposter syndrome. What tips do we have for our listeners, our viewers, our amazing community about how to tackle this big, audacious thing called imposter syndrome?
I know we touched on it a bit, but I think focusing on your unique ability, like remembering what value you bring to the table
Yeah.
Yep.
is really important because I think sometimes we get stuck in the rut or the rumination of things that maybe didn't go well or things that you don't do well or someone else is more skilled than you. I think it's really important just to go back and remember, why are you here? Why were
Mm,
you chosen? What are the things that you can bring to the table? And just know that self-doubt is completely normal.
yep.
That's why we got Google and friends. Honestly, like if you don't know,
Yeah.
if you're not confident, like I have had countless people message me on Teams after and they're like, what is B/W on our budget files?
Yeah.
Like they don't want to ask in the meeting, which
What's
is fair. If
EBITDA?
you don't want to ask in a public setting, then go to somebody that you know might know it and
Yeah.
ask them, right?
Yeah.
Like or Google it afterwards. Like you can do that without doing it in a super public setting, but I think it's fine to be like, "Hey, I don't know this. It's something I want to go learn and figure out." It doesn't mean I'm an
Empower.
Mhm.
imposter. It just means
Yeah.
I got part of this area of the business I need to learn. Like
Yeah.
none of us started in a career and we're like, "Oh, this is all we need to know." Like we have all incrementally grown
100%.
massively in our skill
Yeah.
sets, soft
Yes.
skills, emotional skills, leadership skills.
Yeah.
And you have to do that by asking questions and like, I don't know. So for me, it's like having people that you can trust, willing to ask them questions and to look
Yeah.
dumb if you need to be like, "Hey, I don't know what B/W is on a financial sheet."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mine's a bit of a two-parter. The first one, fuck your imposter syndrome. Like, call
Yeah.
it whatever it really no, like, call it whatever
Amen,
it really
I
sister.
is.
love that. I love
Being
that.
like, you're either nervous about something or whatever, like,
Yeah.
fuck that. Throw it out and, like, focus on whatever is really underlying and don't give yourself
Yeah.
another like, give me a break. And then the second part of that would be surround yourself like, to your point, Laurel, about having friends. I am a big believer, and I talk about this with, like, not just you guys, but a few of my other friends. You are who you surround yourself with. And, like,
Mhm.
Totally.
you see those, like, whether those motivational posts or whatever, that you are the influence of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Like, I love that I'm surrounded with a bunch of people that will, like, Nina, kick our butts to start a podcast or make us feel
Yeah.
confident in something or shout out, our abilities, like even across the 4 of us, like correcting us when we say that we can't do something or we have a gap and we
Love that.
immediately rally about the things that we're really good at. Or we've all given each other advice or like things that we're gapping on, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think, yeah, fuck your imposter syndrome and surround yourself with people that are going to help like motivate and
Build you up.
drive for not like blow you
Totally.
up unnecessarily or blow smoke up your you know what, but like let let's inspire and be positive and like
Yeah.
drive forward to something. But yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it's also expressing out loud where you're at in the process, like
Mm,
telling people you are new, telling people you do not know this at all, because I think people's natural tendencies are not to blame you or point fingers or laugh. They actually just want to help. But
totally.
unless they know where you're at and you're feeling, you're
Mhm.
never going to get past there.
Totally.
Nobody wants you
All
to
right.
bullshit. It's much better to have somebody that's like,
Exactly.
I can work with you if you're like, hey, I need help here. Great. Instead
Yeah.
of telling me some bullshit that is not true, that's harder for me to work with. So
Yeah.
for sure.
100%.
Yeah, you
100.
don't have to be a know-it-all
No,
No.
because
nobody
you're
wants
never gonna
that.
know it all.
No.
No.
No, and
All
that
right.
doesn't
So
make you an imposter.
Yeah.
to wrap up, some incredible lessons. One, I think how you label yourself and what you say are your beliefs really sets the course. If you're starting from a positive position, it's only going to radiate from there. Second is really focusing on what is underlying your self-doubt. That's a big part, like recognizing where you're at, where you want to drive to. Focus on your unique ability. And I think this is not just about the hard skills, but also the soft skills, which I think sometimes are really overlooked.
Or your PowerPoint.
A PowerPoint skills. Exactly. Go to someone you know. Like, don't be afraid to ask those questions and empower yourself to keep learning, adopting that learner's mindset.
Yeah.
And then lastly, as is the theme with all of our episodes, surround yourself with people that are going to make you feel freaking good and celebrate each other.
And fuck the labels.
And fuck the labels. Fuck that imposter syndrome.
Love it.
Amazing episode, ladies. Thank you so much. This is definitely uplifting. And the next time I feel any form of self-doubt, what are we saying? Fuck it.
Fuck your imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Thanks for being part of the After Call. If this felt familiar, you're not alone. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment, and share this episode with a friend. See you next time for more real talk about the beautiful, messy chaos of life.